Welcome, everyone, back to Cat's Eye on the Future. This week, we have a rather shortened show because I'll be out of town most of this weekend, and the same thing will probably be true at next weekend when I'm reading at a festival in Dublin. So I did want to check on things, however, because October is often a very pivotal month. It not only brings us into the fall season. In Celtic traditions, it was the beginning of the new year. It tends to be kind of an in-between time of power and place. Not to mention that a lot of governments, including the U.S. and Ireland, make their budgets or other versions of important legislation during this time that affects everybody for the following year. So it's kind of a dicey and interesting time. I'm really glad I did a check-in this week, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that reading with you. And I hope I'll see you again next week, or at least the week after. If I'm unable to do a show next week, we'll have a Best of Cat's Eye, so you can catch up on reruns if you like. So, but without further ado, I think I would like to get started on this week's show, and we'll get to that right after these short messages. All the music used on the show today is from musicalley.com, your source for free-to-air music for podcasts. The artists place their music up for free to air in hopes that you, the listener, will visit their site and purchase some of their outstanding musical offerings. So after the show, why not visit musicalley.com and explore their extensive playlist?
And she sings, she goes home in the evening with the dew all on her wings.
Have questions? The cards have answers. If you would like a personal reading with Melody, just go to my website, melodipsychicreadings.com. That's Melody with an I, psychicreadings.com, for information, or email me at melodyreader@gmail.com. Readings are available using Skype, phone, email, or even in person if you are lucky to live in Ireland. Why not find out what special messages the cards have just for you and book a private reading today?
And see me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland. See me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Cat's Eye on the Future. First, before we get to our reading, the usual disclaimer. All readings on this show are for entertainment purposes only, but like any form of entertainment, they can be used for your very own information when making your personal decisions. That said, let's take a look at what the cards and runes have to tell us about this coming week. Now this week I asked the question in this particular way. As you remember, I varied a bit sometimes, just so we get a little different feel. What are the most important energies and or events coming up for the time period September 30th through October 6th, 2013. Wow. When I look at the cards for this reading, one thing stands out loud and clear. This is a time period when some serious decisions and possibly karma are likely to come back and force the world into making some serious choices about war and peace, among other things. Now, for those of you following at home, remember you can go to my website, click on Cards for Episode 19, and you can see the cards and watch them along with me. You'll see this reading has not one but two decision cards in it. One is the puzzle. That's a decision that must be made. And the scales. That's usually a decision or a judgment that's often the result of previous decisions. We'll go more into detail on those in a moment. But just a first glance at this reading, it just screams that October may be a very decisive month, even perhaps one that seriously impacts the world's fate and destiny on how we go on for the next several years. But more on that pretty soon. Having jumped ahead a bit to give that summary, I want to go back and look at the individual cards now, and the runes, before going any further. Then we can take a look at what this might all mean and make some educated guesses about how this may all play out. But first, the individual cards. Now the first card you'll see if you're watching at home is also the card that sets the foundation for the reading. It's the card that sort of sets everything off. We talked about that before, but it really is very important, and this card is the Cave. The Cave card, for those of you not able to follow at home, shows a person hunched over inside a cave in a fetal position, with their arms over their head trying to hide. The color of this card is sort of a gray-blue, and the card is all about depression, sadness, lethargy, hiding away, just that kind of feeling of just, I want it to all go away, and sort of hunched over. And sometimes this card, it's about depression, personal depression, but it could even be economic depression, especially in world readings like this. It's come up that way before, so keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, I really think there's some of both of these trends in this reading. With public mood next week likely to turn really sour, I think especially in the U.S., and possibly in other places in the Western world, a sort of gray-eyed hopelessness feeling, especially in the U.S., where I suspect Congress is going to remain deadlocked and just let a projected government shutdown go ahead. And that kind of going to leave a lot of people feeling a combination of angry and frustrated and like they can't really do anything or their opinions don't matter. I think even if they do manage to pull a rabbit out of a hat and have some sort of compromise or prevent the shutdown, I don't think many people are going to be very happy with the decision made. I think people on all sides of the political spectrum are just going to be unhappy with whatever the outcome is. I think a certain amount of this is going to be played out also in some parts of Europe and other areas where budgets and other very important things are decided, usually in the early parts of October. And as I said before, this reading is all about decisions. The next card in the Cave is the Puzzle. It's the card that comes right after the Cave. And it indicates both a puzzle to be solved and a decision that just can't be avoided. On this card, there are two doors, and you have to choose one of them. On the card, thorny vines and dense growth prevent the viewer from going forward if they were invisibly walking on a path without choosing a door. I often tell my clients that refusing to make a decision is a decision in this case. The universe will just be selecting the door for you if you refuse to choose one for yourself. So usually it's better to go ahead and make a choice, because even if it turns out to be one you're not really happy with, at least you know you made it and didn't have it made essentially by default. But my hunch is that the combination of public mood and economic woes, in other words, the depression, are likely to bring on such a decision, particularly on the part of some folks in power, or perhaps the universe will decide for those folks how things are next going to play out. That decision will likely concern peace, which is the middle and target card in this reading. Remember, the cards on either end and the card in the middle are always really important, because the one in the middle is kind of the focus. That's why for these readings I tend to use 5 cards, because it gives me a center card. And in this case, it's peace. Peace is that lovely cathedral card. It shows a gentle light coming through stained glass windows. It's normally a very good card, though sometimes it can mean something is stuck or unmoving. In my weblog, we kept getting a prisoner card all week, off and on, and even a bit last week. So this could be something about a decision that's trapped. But, well, I think that may be part of the energy. I think there may be some other things going on here. Because, well, the next card is the Scales. There are 2 decision cards in this deck, and this is the other one. So pretty much we have the concept of peace, which in itself is pretty much the absence of conflict. In other words, under a national scale, a lack of war or violence, or perhaps people at least not in conflict or arguing with each other. But it's bordered on either side by a decision card. One is usually a choice made by the parties directly involved. That would be that first puzzle card. But the Scales card on the other side is more like, think of the scales of justice, or a judgment, or even karma. This is that concept of previous actions have consequences, or as that wonderful prophecy scholar John Hogue refers to in his fantastic book, Predictions for 2013-2014. This is quote-unquote Captain Karma, come back the superhero, to demand justice in that very special way the karma has to force people to reap what they have sown. As a side note, I highly recommend this book to all my listeners, as John is one of the real experts of this sort of current event reading. Now, he uses astrology for the most part. I'm using cards. And he also uses his inner oracle for insight. And I'll be sure to post a link to where you can get a copy of this book if you want to. It's available on Kindle. I'm reading it right now. And I'll have that link up on episode of 19 of my card reading page. I'm not getting anything for plugging this book, but it does provide a lot of information that it looks like the cards are also rhyming with and hinting at. And I always feel that particularly when you're doing this kind of sort of current events projective reading, it's good to have more than one source of information. So I'm going to borrow John's term of Captain Karma because it's just so appropriate, but I also encourage you to get the book that it originally came from. Anyway, our friend Captain Karma, he's very likely to ride into this picture this week with military thoughts on his mind. Yeah, he's that kind of superhero this week, as the Warrior card is the final actual card in this reading. Much of the time, especially in a private reading, the Warrior card is simply a strong person, or really often it's a significant other, particularly the boyfriend or husband of a client. But it can also stand for both actual warriors and actual warfare, especially again in a current events reading, or at least disruption and conflict. Now, when you look at this reading, if you take out the decision cards, you get in a row the cave, hiding or depression, peace, and then war all together. Now this sounds like the makings for a fast-paced thriller novel all on its own. Just insert your enemy of the month, and presto, you have the markings of a great novel, or in this case, I suspect, a great distraction from reality on the part of the powers that be. But the decision cards, both the personal or collective decisions by someone or someone's concerning peace itself, followed by that judgment card concerning war and warriors, is rather unsettling, to say the least. For weeks, and several years now on my blog, there have been growing indications of this possible decided war, a war that was cooked up, essentially, a big war, probably based with money at its roots and some foundation, some way. And while I don't strongly feel that it will break out in a full international scale this next coming week, I think it's highly probable that some more of those early skirmishes and pieces, or possibly final decisions about it, or what they think may be final decisions, may be in the process of taking place. And some of this may be behind the scenes. This may not all be out in public, but I think it's definitely happening. What actually happens is probably going to be a combination of the public's suppressed mood, the personal decisions of whoever is in charge, and the already rolling ball of Captain Karma with his bowling ball. Cause and effect, action and reaction. He hits those pins the ball's already been set in motion. They may not be whacked right away, but the ball's headed that way. Now, how do the runes affect this reading? Well, in some ways, they provide a bit more background as to how these decisions may come about. But they also reinforce that literal diciness of this particular time period. Now, why is that? Well, my runes were stuck together today, so I wasn't exactly sure which one was first and which one was supposed to be read second. But I decided to read them in the order I placed them, because they make more sense that way. Since they both play on each other anyhow, I'm not sure it matters all that much, but sometimes rune order can sort of slightly color things, and this is the way I've chosen to do it. So in that case, the first rune is Lagouche, or lake. This could actually be about a body of water, lakes, streams, ponds, oceans, etc. So these are something to watch for in the news, and actual bodies of water. But more often the rune also suggests something hidden under sort of symbolic waters. Something that's rising to the surface. Just like that new island off the coast of Pakistan that formed last week's earthquake. It came up suddenly, it wasn't there, and now it is. It may also have been there in the 1940s. It was hidden again until it came back. The Lagouche rune can bring actual watery surprises like this, in the form of lost lands or rising islands. But more often it symbolizes information that's slowly rising up to the surface and becomes noticed. It is also about things psychic and perceptive. It's very similar to the moon card in the tarot deck or in my side card deck, only it focuses on the watery and sometimes murkier aspects of that very similar energy. Information is revealed when someone either dives down to retrieve it, the information flows to the top, or the surface of the water level offs, and you can see that object or that energy or that influence, whatever it is, that information, because the water is temporarily or permanently lower. My hunch here is that the revealing of hidden information, however it occurs, may help create the public mood and or actual crisis that results in people wanting to hide in their caves or to simply go into retreat. Again, that cave card, it isn't all bad, but it definitely stages a withdrawal. It's kind of that, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to face the reality. I don't want to see what is happening. This information that is revealed may be real. In fact, it probably is. But even whether it's real or it's kind of imaginary or foggy or muddy, it may be used to help create this threat to peace or a perceived threat to peace and focus on the warrior as a distraction. It won't surprise me at all if the situation is economic, like perhaps the derivatives bubble bursting or new issues with the banks or a crash or a sudden change in the stock market. But it could be something totally different. It's definitely, whatever it is, it's powerful enough to really color the world gray for a while for a lot of people. And during this period is when these decisions, both chosen or those unchosen or reactive, they just become unavoidable. You know, they have to be made in some form or fashion. The final rune really cements this whole time period as dicey, chancy, and full of risks. It's the Pathro rune. That's the dice cup. This rune is seen as literally a gamble or gamble with fate by some people. Other folks view this energy as simply a rolling out what was already fated to happen, or in a sense the dice have already been rolled. We just have to see where they land. In this rune again, we see the echoes and actions of Captain Karma, the Scales card. Another indication this particular superhero is out in full force this coming week. Now some people, including me, also associate this rune with the Norse trickster god Loki, who, well, he's not Captain Karma, he's not really anything evil either, the way he's sometimes portrayed, but he's a tricky and a clever being, whereas I see Captain Karma as being much more, you did this, therefore this happened. Loki's kind of going to try to have a way around it. Most of the time, his jokes end up helping mankind in the old stories. Sometimes he hurts himself in the process, but usually makes things right in the end. But meanwhile, his situations he gets into can get really tight indeed, and it can really look like it's dangerous for everybody. Now, there are many scholars that have pointed out that Loki is the dramatic force in much of Germanic mythology. Without Loki, not much happens, and the local religious festivals and probably ritual drama of ancient times in Europe would have been pretty staid and boring without his antics. You know, nothing much happens without Loki. If you don't have some drama or some questioning or some attempts to sort of, work around things or find solutions, nothing much happens. And so that Loki plays this very important role. But sometimes too much drama can have some pretty harsh consequences, especially when the trickster misreads the level of anger or upset he's causing in his immediate audience. In other words, it seemed like a good idea at the time. In one version of this mythos, Loki, the trickster, finds out the hard way when he goes one step too far, and one of Odin's favorite sons, Balder the Bright One, dies as a result. According to the story version, the other gods get so mad they chase Loki down, and they bind him under the earth with a nasty snake dripping venom all over him. It's a poisonous snake. Loki's devoted wife holds a bowl to catch the venom so it doesn't hurt him, so he gets some relief. But ever so often she has to move the bowl to empty it. Even goddesses have to do this from time to time. And Loki is said to wither in pain, and when he moves, that's supposed to be what causes earthquakes. Now, not everyone accepted or even told this story, but in places that did, you could get the idea of, again, the trickster had just gone too far. And the result is an earthquake, essentially, or either real or metaphorical. The dice cup is both the fate that awaits every roll of the karmic dice, but also it can be turned. It's that turned bowl spilling out, causing tremors in both the physical and the psychic worlds. Even if the bowl is replaced quickly, Sigyn runs right back and gets the bowl right underneath. That venom's already spilled out, and it can be amazingly painful, and perhaps even the start of an infection that's very difficult to stop. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting here, is that something may happen next week that something's revealed, it may kind of get covered over or patched up, but the the damage is already done in that sense. It can't totally go away. Now, Loki, being presumably immortal, or at least as immortal as most of the gods are, survives these bites and this poison, even though one gets the sense that perhaps he would rather not do so, the way the stories go. His judgment, mandated by the other gods in this version, was to suffer for his act until released at the closing of the age of Ragnarok, when that end of time, when the supposedly the current world just goes up in this big battle between the gods, the giants, and Loki and everybody else, and eventually this creates a new world, new heaven and new world. I'm sure this sounds familiar because the story is familiar. It just gets told in different religions in different ways. But we get this very powerful image when it comes to spilling of the dice cup, especially when you combine it with the card images of a cave, peace, war, and perhaps even that idea of Ragnarok itself. I mean, this is very, very much in the human psyche, this idea of this build-up and, the whole peace and war conflict idea. Now, on the other hand, many people view Loki as being still active in the world, both as a positive, entertaining dramatist who you really want to invite to your parties because, well, he's a lot of fun if he's invited. And there's another story about him called Lokasana, which you can look up on Google, which will tell you some of the horrible things that happen to your party if Loki isn't invited. So this is just a hint. Invite Loki to your parties. You'll enjoy him a lot more. But anyway, that's a Loki that keeps people laughing and through their tears and gives joy and just kind of comic relief to the world. But there's also the joke that goes too far and ends up backfiring in some very nasty and surprising ways. So, even when Loki is not actually bound, he still sometimes, again, there is this tendency, the whoopee cushion and the buzzer, if it actually gets electrified, then it can actually hurt you. And that's kind of, you want to be careful here. That energy is there this week. In any event, this week has almost the certainty of certain discussions coming to a head like that. Though the public may not see them right away, as I mentioned before, there's the real possibility of very symbolic, even actual earthquakes when the dice spills over and rolls. I mean, it really feels like something that is really pretty shattering. Hopefully, it may not be we may all be here next week and I may be saying, oh yeah, it was that and I was a little over the top on that. But it really feels pretty significant. For most people, though, on a personal level, I'm getting a sense that this will be a week when hiding from the news is going to be a really common theme. With people choosing to solve their personal puzzles by hoping to make it all go away, this won't last, but as a temporary measure, it may actually even bring a certain amount of personal relief and peace, because, or at least a sort of measured calm. While I don't advise totally ignoring the outside world, things that happen this week may be far too important for that. But a certain amount of strategic withdrawal, using that cave card positively, may not be a bad idea either. Concentrate on making your own personal cave as comfortable as possible, instead of making it a gray and kind of dismal place that you're just shaking in your boots. No matter what's happening in the outside world, try making it a calm island of its own peace. Whatever your vision of peace, try to capture that and bring it into your home, because that's going to really help warm the inside. You want to change the cave card in this sense to the home card, which has the cat on the mat and the fire in the fireplace. And, most of us are really going to have the ability to do that, no matter how gray or nasty it is outside. Now, lots of people may be facing major decisions this week anyway. Decisions about situations that they won't all be able to run away from or even be of their own making. Some of them will be consequences of decisions they made a long time ago and forgot about, or perhaps discarded as unimportant, that are coming back again with Captain Karma. Other people may see some legal activities affecting them, or new laws that come into play as we go into October. Again, lots of countries, for some reason, October seems to be a real change point. Some it's December, a lot it's October, but again, we're kind of going to that fall-winter period. If there is talk of military action that even hints of a draft in some places, that would also be something you would want to be concerned about. It's hard to tell at this point, but if the dice rolls that way, I'm sort of reminded of that old image from the 1960s, and I'm just, as a child, I remember of the numbered balls being used for the selective service number. That was the draft during Vietnam in the U.S., and that's where one of the ways where it defined if your number has come up. If your number comes up, well, you had to join the military, and very often that meant going to war. Again, this sort of gamble also has positive aspects, though, like winning the symbolic lottery or winning a symbolic game in Las Vegas. It's when the cards themselves seem to be so serious, I'd be weary on counting on anything like that. Normally, a Pethro time period is a good time for card playing or gambling games or anything like that. This time, I would only do that if the stakes are like pennies. If you want to do this privately in your own home or with your closest friends and have I remember my father's friends vaguely from being a little tiny girl, and they had like stacks and stacks of hundreds of pennies, and they would do these incredible card games that went on all night, but really they were wagering, maybe $20. That's the most you're going to want to risk at something like this, because this is just a time period when there's too many potential earthquakes and volcanoes out there to really risk any of your actual hard-earned cash. However, on the good side, this is a way to use your own inner strength to provide your best physical and psychic defenses. It's a great week to work on personal protection exercises and other meditations designed to explore new depths and ideas. That warrior card, he's a defender. On the card, he's actually standing outside of camp, guarding it with his sword down. And that's what you want to focus on personally, is that defender energy rather than that offensive energy or that battle energy. You just want to be watchful. Also, this is a great week for students for exactly that reason, because good focused study is likely to be rewarded with a real understanding of information. There's some really clear cut to the chase stuff here that, that particularly that Laguz rune, that you could see information if you're only willing to dig for it. It's a week when just about anything can happen, though. When what starts out to look like a solid and obvious event that is set to occur at the start of the week in your life, or even in both internationally and personally, by the end of the week things may have totally flipped over and things look totally different. I'm not saying this will happen, but it has that potential. That's just that dice cup rolling again, leading us out into the unknown and uncertain future for the rest of this October. Such times as these can be, well, a bit epic. Another reason people like to flee into their emotional and physical home caves when the information comes in just too fast and furious. But epic times also create a certain drive and dramatic feel to life. If you pace yourself and can watch without getting too caught up in things, or have things catch up with you, which is why you want to work on those defenses, so that if they do catch up with you, you have something to come back with, you can do fairly well. It can be kind of interesting. It's a bit of a joke with the idea of got popcorn. Just sit back and watch as much as you can, but don't let it drive you crazy either. Use that withdrawal energy when you need to, but also be ready in case you have to respond. Of course, some people are not going to have much choice, because the drama is just going to catch up with them first. But I sense that this will not be true for most people, at least not yet. A lot of people may be able to sense the way the wind is blowing, sort of like sticking your finger out and seeing how it's going. It's going to probably affect you sooner or later, but I don't think it will by the end of the week. I don't think we'll be really feeling it like whipping us in the face, in other words. It's just going to be out there. The writing will be on the wall if you can see it, but the time is still to prepare for most people. They don't have to actually physically react. You want to be careful of that if things do start to go really south, about that flight or flight reflex, because that's designed the human body to meet current direct threats like the saber-toothed tiger that is about to jump on you. But it's really not good for you to be like this for weeks, and I really get the feeling that this, whatever we're moving into here, this time period, it's likely just the first steps, or actually possibly even the second steps, because we've seen sort of this march progressively going forward. So take time to breathe, to practice meditation, use that withdrawal into your cave to start to create a certain amount of inner peace, even when the outer world may be kind of crazy. But to sum up, this feels really like decision time, a preparatory time, a karmic time when wheels and dice are set in motion, I have no idea where the dice will land yet. That really didn't show in this reading, except for some hints about possible peace and war. But I will do my best to keep looking. So stay tuned for next time, when we'll take another look at Cat's Eye on the Future. Now, this week is going to be a fairly short show, because I have to be gone part of the weekend. And next week I plan to be doing readings at a festival. So I probably will do another short reading then as well. If I can't do a short reading or an interview, we'll just have a rerun and then see you all in 2 weeks. But I'm hoping to have at least a short show next week. So I hope you have enjoyed this at least brief look into what may be kind of an awesome and kind of overwhelming week. And hopefully I'll be able to be back to at least take a look at where things went and then how they're likely to proceed from there. So until then, take care, and I'll see you next time on Cat's Eye on the Future.
But here's a health to the company and one to my lass.
You have been listening to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we take a glimpse of the energies coming soon into your world and into your future. Be sure to join us again next time when we explore another chapter of Cat's Eye on the Future.
Again. But here's a health to the company and one to my lass.